when it happens that bringing aging under medical control is the standard of care in medicine, and we're living to our genetically defined maximum, it will reduce the burden on healthcare systems. Because right now, toward the end of life, in the last, say, 5 or 10 years of life, we're not in good health. And this is when we're most expensive to the healthcare system in the last few years of life. And so, there's a population of people called supercentenarians. Some of them live in certain regions of the world where it's very healthy, it's called so-called blue zones. And some are genetic supercentenarians. And they actually live a really long time in good health, and then one day just kind of pass away in their sleep peacefully. So I think this is the goal, everyone's goal. And what the NIH has stated is or the NIA, National Institute on Aging, has stated as their mission is the compression of morbidity, which is to reduce the period of time spent in poor health at the end of life. So if we can do that, we can reduce the medical costs that are threatening to bankrupt the United States. Diabetes, it's not, the greatest threat to homeland security is diabetes and obesity, okay? It's not, terrorism or wars. It's our own health.
Yeah. High fructose corn syrup is probably a bigger threat to...
Exactly. High fructose corn syrup is a greater threat than Al-Qaeda.
Right.
For sure, by a wide margin. So anyway, if we can address demographic aging by slowing the pace of aging and extending healthy lifespan, there's an additional benefit. It's called the longevity dividend. There's a demographer, J.L. Shansky, who's written about this, which is, suppose Einstein had another 10 years of healthy life and productivity, or Tesla, or great thinkers, John von Neumann. It would be fantastic for society. And so if we could just increase the period of healthy life, and you could sort of move the dependency ratios a bit, the ratio working to non-working proportion of the population, that could be a huge benefit to the economy. And if we don't do that, if we do not extend healthy lifespan, I think healthcare costs are already 15+% of US GDP. And we have what's called the silver tsunami. So the demographic aging pyramid, the baby boomers are starting to get sick. So if we treat the root causes of these diseases, which is aging, as we can see in the animals, they live longer, healthier lives, and that will at the very least buy us some time to advance the economy and to get organized in anticipation of the silver tsunami.
Yeah. Well, what for the audience that's following along, if they find this interesting, they want to learn more about it, what is there websites they can go to? Is there magazines they can subscribe to? Is there books they should read? Like how do people find out more about this?
Yeah, so there are a lot of resources out there. So a good primer into the field is a book called Lifespan by David Sinclair, who's a professor at Harvard, who's active in the biotech space. And also one called Age Later by Nir Barzilai, who's also a professor at Einstein College. You can subscribe to a really good newsletter called Longevity Market Cap newsletter run by my friend and partner Nathan Chang. There's also a useful website called longevitylist.com that lists most of the longevity biotech companies and the investors in this space. If somebody wants to invest in the field, they can get in touch with me and I can connect you with the various venture funds, including my own, HealthSpan Capital. And that we have an angel list rolling fund, so you can actually write small checks into that in addition to a larger pool of capital.
So one of the other interesting parts of our conversation was when you talked about some specific interventions, and I'm not going to even try to pronounce the words that you said, but they were pretty interesting, and I'd love to have you kind of go over that again here.
Sure. So a couple that really captivate the attention and are easy to understand. One is this kind of crazy vampire reminiscent intervention called heterochronic parabiosis. So you surgically link the circulatory systems of an old and a young mouse. You sew them together. And the old mouse gets a bit younger and the young mouse gets a lot older. And so, some of this research had been done over a century ago, but it was sort of revitalized by some groups at Stanford, Irina Conboy at Berkeley now, and Tom Rando. And they, got a lot of press attention because people were joking about, all right, where can I get my hands on some young plasma, et cetera. It turns out young plasma probably won't do much good. It's actually that there's bad stuff in the old blood. But that's actually convenient because we can develop antibodies that will neutralize these deleterious pro-aging factors in the blood. And there was actually an interesting study conducted by this company, Alkahest, in collaboration with Grifols, which is one of the largest blood products companies, and that's a public company, in which they did sort of plasma replacement therapy. So it's almost like bloodletting of George Washington's day. You remove a large amount of blood and replace it basically with saline plus albumin. And it dilutes the bad stuff in the old blood. And they showed in a phase 2 study in Alzheimer's disease, pretty compelling data indicating this prevents cognitive decline. And there's reason to believe that reducing these pro-aging, pro-inflammatory, anti-stem cell factors circulating in the old blood is a really good therapeutic approach. So that is heterochronic parabiosis. It's captivated a lot of attention. There's somewhat, in addition to epigenetic reprogramming, there's some sort of lower hanging fruit therapies as well, which are some of these small molecules. So there are FDA approved drugs that extend healthy lifespan in mice and a bunch of supplements that do the same. So one of them is metformin. This one I think is a little overrated in the aging field, but it extends mouse healthy lifespan about 5%, and it enables humans with diabetes to live about as long as non-diabetic controls, which is incredible. And it works by sort of acting like a caloric restriction or fasting mimetic. It reduces glucose production in the liver. So metformin is one. A lot of people in the aging space take metformin. It's kind of like almost like if you're a Freemason or something, that's like your calling card if you're taking metformin to show that you're really hardcore. But if you want to be even more hardcore, you take rapamycin. And rapamycin is a drug that was actually, same with metformin, almost lost to history. So it's kind of amazing that pharma is as successful as it's been because they keep losing or shutting down productive areas of research. And one of them was rapamycin. So it derives its name from Rapa Nui, Easter Island, the island with the big heads, because it was derived from a soil microbe found there. And a chemist at Wyeth was working on it, and he found that it was really a special compound, but it was his research division was shut down. He stashed it in his freezer for some years and later revived it. And it turned out that this drug, rapamycin, became one of the most important therapies for transplanting of organs because it's an immune suppressant. So you get a kidney donation. You have to suppress your immune system in order to accept it. It's also approved for a couple rare cancers. But the reason it's really interesting in the geroscience and long bio space is it extends healthy lifespan of mice between 10 and 20%, and it works in most animal models of age-related disease. Things like Alzheimer's, cardiovascular disease, it's salutary across the board. And it works by inhibiting a protein called mTOR, and this protein governs, it's a master conductor of metabolism, and in a sense it mimics fasting, and it induces autophagy, and it does a bunch of other stuff. The trouble is, you don't really want to take at least high doses of rapamycin chronically because it'll suppress immune function. So there have been a couple of groups in the field that are developing new analogs of rapamycin that are devoid of these side effects, but still retain the lifespan extending salutary properties. One company, Apollo, built, it's called Aovian Pharma in the Bay Area, developing analogs. We've raised about 40 million to go into the clinic with these new low side effect analogs of rapamycin. And Cambrian, a company I co-founded, has just licensed in assets from Novartis that are mTOR inhibitors. So this is kind of like the first flagship molecular target and small molecule in the longevity space, and it's super well validated. And hopefully it was just the first of many to come because the field of geroscience has been chronically underfunded. It was fringe for many years. And so as more governments and private investors and philanthropists fund this area, And now that the proof of concept is solidly in, I'm confident we're going to surpass and blow out of the water some of these effect sizes of these existing drugs. But that's an FDA-approved drug that you can take yourself, but take it in consultation with a doctor if you're going to.
We hope you enjoyed the video. At Real Vision, we help you understand the complex world of finance, business, and the global economy with in-depth analysis from real experts. Join the revolution at realvision.com.